During the Reformation, there was an explosion of new catechisms. The Lutherans, the Anglican Episcopal, the Presbyterians, everybody wrote catechisms. And we have a lot of them today, of course, and they're great. But when you read them, you'll notice something, that when you get to the stuff on the Trinity, or when you get to the stuff on Jesus, the person of Christ and the deity of Christ, it's short. They go right by pretty quickly. But when you get to things like justification and salvation, it goes on, or the sacraments, it goes on and on and on. Why? Because real catechism that actually does change people, that really forms people, isn't only catechism, it's also counter-catechism. That is to say, it's not just telling you Christian truth, it's doing it in a way that deconstructs the alternative narratives out there in the culture. And let me just ask you a question. In the 15th or 16th century, if you weren't a Protestant Christian in Europe, what were you, class? You're a Catholic Christian. There was no, I mean, there were some Jews around, of course, but the Jew, that wasn't an option. If you were a person, if you weren't Protestant, you were Catholic. And therefore, the Protestant catechisms were deliberately designed to deconstruct the Catholic catechisms, okay? And that's the only way you do real effective education. Because if you only say, well, here's what we believe, but you never say, well, here's what's wrong with what else is out there, then many people will come to church and they'll read and listen to what you say, and yet the world is out there catechizing them too. And you need to say, hey, if you believe this, then you can't believe this, and here's the reason why. Jesus did it in the Sermon on the Mount. What did he say? What Jesus said is, you heard it said, but I say unto you. Now, you know what you heard it said is? Some people think he's talking about the Old Testament. No, read carefully. You heard it said is, this is what you're being told by the authorities. This is what you're being told by the culture, but I say unto you. Now, look, right now, you send your kids to youth group. What, an hour a week, if we're lucky? Meanwhile, 25% of all kids in this country under the age of 21, 25% are spending 8 hours on social media a day. And 57% are spending 4 hours or more a day. They're being catechized. Let me tell you what they're being catechized. There is a catechism out there. There's the identity narrative, and that is, you've got to be true to yourself. There's the freedom narrative, which is, everyone should be free to live any way he or she wants to as long as they don't hurt somebody else. There's the happiness narrative, and that goes like this. In the end, you've got to do what makes you happy. You just got to do what makes you happy. And then there's the morality narrative, and the morality narrative is, hey, no one has the right to tell you what is right or wrong for you. You have a right to define right and wrong for yourself. That 8 hours on social media, that's a catechism. That's coming at your kids, it's coming at your youth, it's coming at you all day in all sorts of incredibly formative ways, because it's not just, well, you're actually going to see it. The things I just said, you're going to see it. They're going to be tweeted. They're going to be out there. And they're going to be stated as givens, like everybody knows these things are true. But they're also going to be the basis of all the videos, of all the movies, of all the music. It's going to be there all the time. Meanwhile, you're putting that up against an hour at church. And even though we are teaching kids our truth, we're not doing it in such a way that the more vivid catechism of the world is in any way being weakened. We're not saying, you heard it said. We're not talking about identity. We're not talking about freedom. We're not talking about morality. We're going through the Trinity. We're going through the deity of Christ. Well, that's great, but let's connect it. And we haven't even begun to do that.